less than nothing, just look at us now. In the arms of peace, we long to sleep. We'll rest tonight. When you lay beside me, I know everything's gonna be alright tonight. Could have been stranded, but we made it out of that town, baby, just in time. All these years we thought we had it down, but it was just a foolish spray. It's okay, and it's alright. This graceful life.
All right, this is Randy Hoenig, and I'm back again with Mason Spong. Mason is the Special Events Coordinator and Quartermaster for the Tulane Police Department. But back in the 70s, he was the police sergeant investigator for the Child Abuse Unit for the New Orleans Police Department. And Mason was a part of a very interesting investigation that happened with a Boy Scout troop in New Orleans that was set up to be a front for a string of pedophiles. And this was kind of a groundbreaking case. And Mason, what do you remember about when you first heard about that troop?
Well, as we progressed with an investigation, the troop came up as a source for referring young boys to pedophiles. What we initially learned was that the scoutmasters and the assistants were all pedophiles, and they would prey on unwed mothers, single moms, and moms who were just having a lot of maybe mental problems or physical problems. That group could not take care of the children that they had to take care of, that were theirs. So when these pedophiles formed this troop, they basically solicited and preyed upon that specific group of people.
Was this just a group of local pedophiles?
No, it was not. We had people from out of town, but the 3 or 4 main characters were all New Orleans residents. So we explored that, and we found that the basis for establishing that troop was just to gain children from these mothers who were in dire straits or in situations and had, maybe some of them had multiple kids.
So they made no attempt to function as a traditional troop?
No, they did not function as a traditional troop, but they did go on outings which were designed to pull the child from the mother and be alone overnight somewhere, whether it was in Louisiana campgrounds or Mississippi campgrounds. Everything that was supposed to happen in a normal Boy Scout troop did not happen because they had bastardized the system to take these children under their wing with gifts, money, little things that they gave them. So that was their main focus of the whole thing.
How much do you think the mothers knew?
The mothers were not really aware because they weren't involved in the activities when the children left with these people, the pedophiles, and took the children off. So they didn't have a clue. And the kids had a fairly good relationship with these guys on a regular basis, and it became standard operating procedure for them to take these kids away, you know.
Did they do things for the mothers as well?
They did. I think some money was exchanged. They paid some bills like lights, gas, water. You know, they might have paid an insurance note on a car. One of them I remember. It was, you know, they were active with this reward system of paying these things, and the mothers believed in them. You know, so.
How many boys do you think were victims in this troop?
Well, I think we identified maybe 20 victims initially, but we had problems proving it. You know, the burden of proof is on us, and we just had problems proving it. Only some kids were able to remember and recollect where these events occurred, when these events occurred, and what occurred. And how we did that was we used the holidays of the calendar, such as birthdays, your brother's birthday, your sister's birthday, Mardi Gras, Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving, and that's how we narrowed down the time span to put in the bill of information and the indictment through a time span of what these kids remembered.
So, you think that there were 20 victims? Oh, let me get.
You said 20 victims.
Yeah. So, if you had, what was the big breakthrough moment?
Well, you know, the whole thing started when one of them sent pictures to a local drugstore to develop. And it was actual photos of the crime taking place, the actual photos. And
they just sent them to a photomat.
Yeah, they sent them to, like, in those days, there was K&B drugstore, Katz and Bestoff. And I think it went to Katz and Bestoff because what happened was the COO was notified by the store manager he had these pictures, and he didn't know what to do with them. So the COO called one of the police captains or lieutenants and notified him, and we went and picked the pictures up, and that's how it started. And then from there, the ball kind of got rolling, and the investigation took off.
Who was the ringleader?
The ringleader was Richard Halverson, and Richard had a home in New Orleans, I think in Gentilly.
Painter Street.
Yeah, on Painter Street, and he was the guy. He was like an air traffic controller. You know, he coordinated the meetings with the children and the events, and then he followed through to make sure they occurred. Because we even had people from other states coming through to have sex with the children. So he was like the air traffic controller. That's how I always referred to him.
So pedophiles from other parts of the country would come into
Yes.
New Orleans?
Yes.
Did the scouts ever go to them?
No, I think everybody traveled as far as Mississippi to those camps, but none that I recollect went to. We had a guy in Boston, Richard Jacobs, and the kids didn't. I don't think the kids went up there, but I think everything was Louisiana and Mississippi.
And Arizona.
And Arizona, yes, I forgot about Arizona.
So that's the one. So this is the person that told me that he was part owners of the New England Patriots.
What was his name again?
Richard Jacobs.
Yeah, what can you tell us about Ricky Jacobs?
Well, he was a part owner of these jet spray machines. It's an icy machine. When you go in the store and you get an icy, he owned part of the patent or the whole patent for the basis of that machine to dispense and chill that drink into an icy. And he had a lot of money, and there was some ties to the New England Patriots. We we never did really clarify that because the NFL, I think, blocked some of our subpoenas for information.
Wow.
So we were amazed, but this guy would come in on a regular basis and have sex with these children.
Did he end up in jail?
No, we put out warrants, multiple warrants for his arrest. We got some cooperation from the town that he lived in, because he didn't live in Boston proper.
Hold on. I'm not hearing you.
You guys need to talk into your mics.
All right.
Out here.
Let me re-ask the question. His name was Ricky what?
Richard Jacobs.
Okay. Did Ricky Jacobs end up in jail?
No. We put out multiple warrants for his arrest because he had multiple victims. We tried to partner with the local police department in the town that he was staying in, Massachusetts. And he was outside in like a suburb, like Metairie is to New Orleans. And we got the runaround from them for the longest. And then by that time, he had absconded into Europe. And, we even went as far as talking to Interpol, sending the warrants off to Interpol, but they never located him.
So to this day, we don't know what happened to him.
I don't even know if he's alive anymore.
So you mentioned that the ringleader was Halverson.
Right.
So what role did Ricky play? Was he more like the financier?
No, he wasn't a rich guy. Richard Halverson was the air traffic controller.
Right. Ricky, I lost the name already. Ricky Jacobs.
Oh,
was he the financier, do you think?
I think a lot of the money came from Jacobs into Halverson's operation, so that Halverson could, he was publishing pictures of the kids to invite the pedophiles into New Orleans and have sex with them.
Now, I would understand publishing pictures today on the internet. How was that done in the 1970s?
They developed pictures and they mailed them to different pedophiles. It was before the internet, so they mailed out these pictures, which was a violation of federal law and using the mail to further a crime. So that's kind of how it happened, and we found hundreds of letters where they had replies from these people. So all that stemmed around Richard Halverson. He was definitely the main guy in the operation.
So he ran it kind of like a business.
Yeah, I would say.
You think it was financially beneficial for him?
I think he had a real interest in the business, and he gained a lot of money from these guys because he was able to provide them with young children to have sex with.
So when people were having sex with the boys in this troop, it was being filmed.
Yeah, it was,
and pictures taken.
Pictures taken. It was filmed, and then they would attempt to get the pictures. And some people in these big operations, you bring your film in, they develop it, and a human being doesn't necessarily see it, and it gets cut, framed, put into an envelope automatically, and then dropped in a bin, and all the name and the information for the guy to pick it up is there. So that person who's running the developer machine really never sees this. The only reason we got it, the beginning, the only reason we got those pictures because the machine jammed, and the person had to step in manually to unjam it, and in the course of jamming it, these pictures, these explicit pictures, were there.
Wow. What kind of evidence did they find at Halverson's home?
Well, it was a treasure trove of evidence. There was the letters to and from him with these men that were out of town. I think we found bank receipts where deposits were made and withdrawals were made. We found sex toys. He just was a treasure trove, you know.
Were you there when they?
Yes. Yeah, when we served the warrant on his house, yes. We served multiple warrants on the individuals here in New Orleans, you know.
Who were some of the other players that were local?
Louis Ciali, Richard Jacobson, and there was a young guy that I can't recall his name at the time.
Lloyd Schwegman?
Lloyd Schwegman is one person, but there was a young guy in the operation who was a victim of pedophilia himself, and they raised this guy as a kid.
Would that be Tom Woodall's son? No. Raymond Woodall?
No.
It was Lloyd Schwegman.
It's Lloyd Schwegman. So this Lloyd became a pedophile himself because he was raised and groomed to be a pedophile. You know, it was natural for him because he saw the actual sex acts happen. He also, you know, of course, was a victim for many, many years, and then became one of the guys that would sexually assault young children. So he was pretty active.
So there was a trial.
Yes.
What were some of the sentences these gentlemen got?
Well, I think some people got life, and then some people got multiple, 40, 45-year sentences.
That's pretty strong sentences for the time.
Yeah, in those days, we had great judges, and we had great prosecutors, and they did a hell of a job prosecuting the case. And the judges, after they heard all the intimate details and saw the pictures of what these children went through, the judge handed out very stiff sentences, very stiff.
Were those decided by the judge, or were they decided by a jury?
Well, no, the jury found him guilty, and then the judge decided the sentence. Now, some of the perpetrators pled guilty to charges, and they got a reduced sentence because they cooperated and gave us information, and which led us to other things.
So, of the 20 boys, how many of them testified at the trial?
Maybe eight testified. And like I told you in the beginning, the problem was having the children remember where it happened, when it happened, how it happened, and we use significant events in the calendar to ascertain a time frame, because in the bill of indictment or the warrant for arrest or the bill of information, there's two different things. There's an indictment bill, and then there's a bill of information. In those things, we were allowed to specify a time frame and not an exact time and date. Like if something happened on the kid's birthday or close to the kid's birthday, we would put to and from, like March the 8th through March the 12th in Louisiana, in New Orleans, and the event that occurred. That's how we were able to nail it down.
How did the community of New Orleans respond to all of this?
I think they responded very well. People were really taken back by it. And the other part of it is it was all happening under the guise of the Boy Scouts of USA. And the Boy Scouts of USA took a pretty big hit. And I think enrollment dropped, and also new pledges dropped while this was going on.
How did the Boy Scouts react to all this?
Well, the Boy Scouts were pretty mum. They didn't say nothing. We gave them the information, and they responded when we, of course, had to send subpoenas for records and all. They responded with that, but other than make a statement or say anything about this, I think they just kept quiet.
Well, they themselves were not sued. There was no civil action against them with
Right.
this case.
Right.
But interestingly enough, I know that the year after this case, the gay ban was put in place.
Right.
And I think it's very likely that those two are related.
I'm sure, because they were actually, I think, humiliated by this, and they thought it best just to be quiet and not make any statements at all.
A lot of the newspaper accounts called it a gay scout ring,
Yes.
and were implicating homosexuals, which is not the case when you're dealing with pedophiles.
No, there's a difference between a homosexual and a pedophile. And their main focus and purpose was to groom young kids who were in somewhat dire straits with a single mother and many children that she had. And they honed in on them and like a heat-seeking missile and did this. So they had an agenda, and they fulfilled their agenda, and it was just a terrible thing.
Harry Connick Sr. was a part of this case. What role did he play?
Harry was the DA at the time, and Harry worked many hours as we brought the case together. In fact, I was moved over from the police department. Instead of reporting to the juvenile or the child abuse unit, I came straight into the DA's offices as a police officer, but a district attorney's investigator. And literally, Harry and I and about 4 others spent many nights putting this thing together. And Harry even tried one of the cases. So he was very involved, very hands-on, and just went after him. I mean, he had like a vengeance.
I'm wondering with him because, of course, he's the father of Harry Connick Jr., who would have been the age of these scouts.
Right.
When this goes on, I bet you that was a motivating factor for him.
I think it was, and I also think that he's a real practicing Catholic, and as much of New Orleans is, and he felt that he owed it to these children to rectify this as best that he could, because it didn't go with his Christian values.
Do you think this case kind of changed views on pedophilia? Did law enforcement take it more seriously after this case?
I think they did, because, initially in the child abuse unit, when I first went to juvenile in 1971 or 72, I can't remember the exact date, it was transferred from street patrol to a detective position. The child abuse that we handled were the children that were burned or forced to do something that hurt them, or neglected. And I think that's all we were doing at the time. We had no inkling on pedophilia, none at all. To get educated, one of the things I did, under a false name, using my home address, I subscribed to these magazines that the pedophiles were getting. We found that in the homes of these pedophiles, and I subscribed to it. I subscribed to it so that I could learn about it, and that was my education into it.
Were these legal magazines?
Yeah, they were legal at the time, and they talked. It was just all about pedophilia, and they had a monthly edition, and you could read these magazines, and I could call you and say, hey, I see you got a child here, and I'd like to meet the child. And so that kind of went on. I'm trying to think what would be akin to another man, something. It was just, it's like a sailboat magazine, you know. I got this sailboat, and it's located here, and you know, you call up and you talk to and investigate the information about the sailboat. But instead of sailboats, it was kids.
So this problem was so pervasive. I understand there was even some people who got into law enforcement who were pedophiles.
Yes. We had one that's doing time now, Stanley Burkhardt, who we all liked and trusted, but it came to pass to find out he was a pedophile, and he actually, over the years, worked his way up to sergeant and was in charge of this child abuse unit.
So he had access to victims.
Every child that passed through the detective bureau, he had access to. And being a sergeant in charge of the unit, he didn't have to answer to anybody, because, you know, a lot of the top echelon took a little hands-off approach in this, and they thought it was a messy operation or messy crime that they didn't want to be involved in. But when they were interviewed, of course, they said, yeah, we're working on the investigation, or we handling it, but they never held Burkhardt to account for what he did, you know.
How was he finally caught?
I'm not quite sure how he was caught, what triggered everything.
Yeah, so he mailed pornography, and the Inspector General at the post office opened up an investigation.
Repeat what he just said. So.
Yeah, Ricky refreshed my memory that he mailed pornography, and the Inspector General in the post office opened up an investigation, and that's how we came to know about it. I think that was the entry into our knowledge of someone in the department, and then over the years, you know, we learned about more pedophiles in the department, and they were summarily dismissed, so that they wouldn't have that police power and authority. So,
did any of them do jail time other than Burkhardt?
No, the ones that we found out about, we went directly to the chiefs, and they brought them in, talked to them, and they were summarily dismissed, because,
which would have been in line with what they did in the day.
Right, because they did not want that to be public record. You know, they didn't want to admit in the department, hey, we found 10 pedophiles. You know, we found one that was a big mess, and they just said, basically internally, if we keep outing these pedophiles, you know, people are not going to trust the police department. So summarily, they dismissed them, you know.
Back to the Boy Scout case, how many people ultimately went to jail over that?
9 to 10. 9 to 10.
It was actually 17.
17, okay.
Am I right about that?
I think so.
Yeah, I read that in one of the accounts, 17 people went to jail.
Okay, well,
So, answer.
if you read it, thanks.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I'm going back 50 years almost. But, yeah, that it was a large number, because I think we did a good investigation, and we brought them to justice, and justice did, in the justice area, did what they were supposed to do.
What do you think was the best evidence in the trial?
Pictures, you know, and then of course some of the children had physical damage from the anal intercourse, so we used that. Also, we brought the medical team in, and they testified to it, which was a first in Louisiana, because usually when a girl was raped, they could, you know, testify to damage to her vagina or her female parts, where this was a new thing. They were talking about young children who were anally penetrated, and it caused damage, and some of these children had to have surgery to correct the damage. You know, was more than stitches. They had actual damage that had to be corrected surgically.
So it sounds like this case really opened a lot of eyes to what was already clearly going on already.
Right. I think this was a deep, dark secret. People usually close their eyes or close their ears because, first of all, it was too messy. It involved children. And then the intercourse part was really the icing on the cake. So they just kind of dismissed these men as gay. But they weren't gay, they were pedophiles. And there's a big difference between a gay man and a pedophile man. And the police department and the justice system finally learned that. But it took years of us pounding on them, because we had 3 or 4 people that stood up and said, hey, there's a difference between these guys.
So this was a Boy Scout troop set up just to bring victims to pedophiles. Were there other organizations that they had done the same thing with?
There was some boys' ranch, I seem to remember.
Oh yeah, there was the K-Bar B Ranch over in was it in Lacombe? And they would take the boys over there, but I think that was associated with the scout troop, and they would go camping with them, for lack of a better term, and that's where a lot of these sexual acts happened in the K-Bar B Ranch, which was a local recreational area.
So this pedophile ring, did this pretty much put an end to that, or did it reform?
Well, it's like a weed. You can think you killed it, but it grows somewhere else. Or one root survives, and it comes back to haunt you. This is not something that you ever going to get rid of. I firmly believe that. They are secretive, they're manipulating, and they're dangerous, because it wouldn't surprise me that we've lost some children to this, and there's one, I can't think of his name right offhand. I believe Stanley Burkhardt drowned in the Mississippi River.
That would be Eddie.
And his name was Eddie?
Yeah, Edward Wells. Stanley Burkhardt used to call him a piece of shit hustler from the principal.
Right. And so I think he was drowned in the Mississippi River. When they recovered his body, the police wrote it off as a suicide or something. So the police didn't even want to bring that to light,
Are you still in contact with any of the boys that were in that troop?
Yes. One particularly. Ricky Winman.
What role did he play in all this?
Well, he was a victim of multiple pedophiles. And, I kind of grew attached to him because at that time I had children, and I just I grew attached to Ricky, kind of looked out for him until at a certain point I was transferred. I got a promotion. I had to be transferred because in the police department, if you got promoted, you wasn't allowed to stay in that spot that you were in. You had to go into another spot. And so I kind of lost contact with him for a long time. But I'm grateful that I was able to reestablish a good friendship with him. And to this day, we are great friends. I kind of look at him as a son. He's always been close to me, and I've always been close to him.
Well, I am sure he appreciates the mentorship you gave him.
Oh my God, yes.
So we've been talking to Mason Spong. This has been very, very informational. Thank you so much for giving us this glimpse into the past and for giving us the insight that this is not a new problem. It's been going on for a long time, and pedophiles are going to find a way. They don't need the internet. They don't need social media. They can use post office boxes or any other forms to get this stuff done, and we have to be ever vigilant.
Well, you do, and like I said before, you can pull a weed out and kill it, but there's another weed that's going to come behind it, and 9 times out of 10, that person will have learned from the person who is now gone, either incarcerated or dead, and he has established his agenda and motive in his secretive ways, basically because he was taught that.
All right, this is Randy Hoenig again, and I am visiting with Mason Spong, who is... Let me start over. So this is Randy Hoenig, and I am interviewing Mason Spong, who is the Special Events Coordinator and Quartermaster for the Tulane Police Department in New Orleans, Louisiana. And in his spare time, he is the chairman of the board for the Survivors of Childhood Sexual Abuse, a new organization that's making quite a splash in helping sexual abuse victims out there. Mason, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Randy.
The organization's relatively new, but the problem is old. It's been going on for a long time. You've dealt with this in your past, I understand, in law enforcement.
Yes.
What are the goals of the organization? What do you want them to accomplish?
Well, I think there's a couple of goals. The first one, and the main goal, is to assist victims, to help them find their way, and build up the courage and the stamina to stand up and say, I was sexually abused. Now, the organization's not formed to do specialized care. Basically, we good listeners, and we listen to what happened to people. And then we take that and try and act upon it, whether it be law enforcement or just help them reach the point where they'll go to law enforcement. And then we have groups. We have a women's group and a men's group, and that happens every week.
So they meet in person?
So, no, they meet on Zoom. And they have the meetings on Zoom unless there's 2 people in one city, and you have to be corrected on this, that one victim might go to another victim's house and they're on Zoom together. But they meet like this, and the leaders, and basically there is a little therapy that the women's and the men's group give these victims, which helps them. And some of the victims we've helped have become active in our organization, which I think is wonderful. You know,
what would be some of the bigger accomplishments the organization has had?
Well, Ricky Winman,
he's your president, right?
He's the president, and he fearlessly goes after these pedophiles, and guiding the victims to law enforcement, meeting with them, counseling them, and I think that's one of the biggest things that has happened, because we have gone in the last 6-7 months, we have gone really hands-on, and Ricky is now full-time handling these victims, and he points them towards good medical and mental care, and if they have the ability to afford it, and most of this can be handled on their insurance, because there is mental insurance on the policy for health care. So that's some of the bigger things we've done.
Many states are trying to get their statute of limitations laws changed. Does this organization involve itself in that process?
Absolutely. We've teamed up with some legislators, and here in Louisiana, we had the statute of limitations changed, which was very promising, especially in this state. And I think, we're going to make a push for another state. I can't recall which one offhand.
The mandatory reporter law.
The mandatory reporter law. And so we're going to, as our victims come to us, we then basically create a roadmap. How are we going to help this one victim and the laws of the state? Is there a way or possible way that we may help change the laws to benefit the victim, not the perpetrator?
Is there a website someone can go to
Sure.
to learn about what they help? Let me start that over.
Yeah, the
So
website.
let me start over again. So how would someone find this organization online?
Well, the website is www.scsaorg.org. scsaorg.org. And that's how you contact us. You have the ability on the website to email us. Everybody in the organization has email, and we answer very promptly. So you can do that method of contact, and then you'll get a response from us.
And your linkage to law enforcement and medical help, but you don't actually provide medical help yourself.
Yeah, no, we don't go out of our lane. We stay in our lane, and basically we will educate you about what your options are.
Is there can people also make a donation to this organization?
Yes, our web page is designed beautifully, and it's designed with that in mind, because there are expenses, and nobody receives a salary from the organization. You got to remember, this is strictly volunteer, and we're always looking for good volunteers. You can go to the donate button and donate whatever amount you want using your credit card. So that's really easy to do.
Is the organization made up mostly of victims? Or let me rephrase that.
Yes.
Is the organization made up mostly of survivors?
Yes. It's made up mostly of survivors. We have one or two people like myself who were involved in the investigations of these crimes, or maybe their son or daughter was a victim of a pedophile, and they're helping too. So it's all volunteer, no salaries, but we do incur expenses, and we just need help financially if you can help us.
All these years later, what is your motivation to continue to be a part of helping these victims out?
Well, everybody in their life picks a cause, and my cause was the health and well-being of these children, and now I'm not in actually investigating these crimes anymore. I felt that the organization would benefit me because I could give them my expertise and kind of guide them around law enforcement, which some victims are very scared to talk to a law enforcement officer.
Is law enforcement always cooperative?
No, not always, and that's why you got to kind of poke the bear, so to speak. And, if you get some investigator who just nonchalantly is going through the motions and the moves, then I advise them to seek help and go higher. And at some point in that chain of command, they're going to identify someone who would take more action and better care of that victim.
So that's advice they can receive if they go to the website.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mason.
Thank you.
And it's alright. Don't get up, baby. I'll get green.